What's up, people? Welcome to week 4. Here we are getting closer to submitting our first essay. It's Monday, September 9th. Let's get started. Woot, woot. Okay. So on the docket for today, we have review of paragraphs, further info on integrating quotes, converting outlines to paragraphs, and then works cited page. Okay. I'm going to go over all these things in the lectures. If you haven't noticed yet, sometimes these lecture topics are look different on my screen than they do on your original document because I kind of modify them as we go through the course. Okay, changing them up. This week, your main goal is writing your first draft of your essay and spending time reading your memoir. Okay. So here's in our weekly lessons, week 4. You can see the notes that I'm going over today. You have a link to EasyBib, which I'll show you in a little bit what that is. This is where you're going to be submitting. You have 2 places to submit your essay 1 drafts. You have to submit one here in this discussion post, which I'll show you later. And then you have to submit it here for me to grade. I don't grade the discussion post. That's going to be for you and doing some peer review and peer editing. I am grading this right here. It's the same draft, just 2 different spots. Okay. All right. So the goal for today, or I'm sorry, the goal for this week is to go from this. This is your outline. Let's say this is the outline that you made. Okay, this is my sample outline. Okay, with my anecdotes, my definition, my source, my examples I want to use, and my conclusion. All right, that's my very basic outline. Okay, you are going to start with this, and the goal for this week is to end with this: a fleshed out, drafted essay. Okay, with a works cited, which actually should be on its own page. I don't know why it's there. That. Okay, that's your goal, is to end up with this. Okay, so let's talk about how we get there. Now, so what you're going to do is, what you should do is with your outline. Okay, begin with your outline. Okay, begin with your outline. And you want to go to file and make a copy of it. If this is a Google Doc, you can just hit make a copy. And you want to do something like English 1101 essay 1 draft. You want to save it, something like that. Okay. So now we have our we have 2 documents. We have an outline, and we have this one. See, I could open up my original outline if I, wanted. It's here. See, outline sample for sample essay 1. And then I have my English 1101 essay 1 draft, which looks like the outline. You want to write your essay in this draft. You want to begin with your outline, okay? And this is great because it makes it very easy and it's very easily organized, all right? The great thing about writing your essay in your outline is that you don't have to write it all at once. You don't have to sit down and write your essay from beginning to end. In fact, you shouldn't do that. You should not write your entire essay in one sitting, okay? Because your brain is going to be consistently drained as you do that. All right. You want to write it in chunks. So if today's Monday, you have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You have 7 days, not including today. You can just take today out because today you're just watching this lecture. So you have 6 days. You have 6 days to write 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. That's all you're writing is 4 paragraphs. Okay. So you should, I know I don't like doing stuff on the weekend. To me, the weekend's the worst. Like Saturday, Sunday, no way. Okay. So you should start tomorrow, Tuesday, and you should write 1 paragraph a day. 1 paragraph on Tuesday, 1 paragraph on Wednesday, 1 paragraph on Thursday, 1 paragraph on Friday. And these should be like kick-ass paragraphs. These should be like the best paragraphs you're capable of writing. Okay. You should feel like you're writing an entire essay, but you're just writing 1 paragraph at a time. All right. So like, let's say you want to begin with your anecdotes. Now, one thing I wanted to go ahead and I realize this, my heading is a little off. This needs to be boop, 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 right there. There you go. Great. I'm going to keep my same title, King's Kingdom. That's my title. That was the title of my outline. And so that's the title I'm going to keep for my sample essay as well. Okay. All right. So then my summary of the story. I'm going to go ahead and I can just go ahead and write this. I mean, I'm going to write a summary of my time, what it was like reading Stephen King's It for the first time. Okay. So I'm going to write like 1 just a sentence at a time as I go through it. Let's see here. Okay. So my paragraph looks like this. Summary of the story. What was it like reading Stephen King's It for the first time? I'm going to delete that. And I'm going to, you have to imagine that I just wrote this. Okay. I'm not going to actually write it out for you on a lecture. That's going to sound really boring. Okay. But here's my basic anecdotes. My eyes were bulging as I read the most graphic book I had ever experienced. I was 12, going on 13 in just a few months. And still, I think I was way too young to have read Stephen King's It. The book was not only terrifying, but for a 13-year-old, I guess I'll living in the 90s, pre-iPhone, let alone pre-internet, it was the closest thing to, quote, adult material that I encountered up to that point in my life. It was violent, crude, demented, but also very exciting. I remember coming across certain passages that were discussing things that I had never seen before, as in graphic depictions of sex and being super paranoid that someone was going to look over my shoulder and see what I was reading and immediately grab the book, yell at me, and tear it up in front of me. Of course, this was an over-exaggeration of how an adult would behave. I think most of the adults in my life didn't care at all what I was reading, just as long as I was reading something. They would look over to see me with a 1,100-page book in my lap for hours, which was unusual because I had never been that into books before I read it. The irony is that my parents censored me from films that were rated R because we went to a Southern Baptist church that preached the immorality of the sex-obsessed sin factory of Hollywood, or as they put it, unholywood. The 80s and 90s didn't see books as threats to people's morality, and I was greatly appreciative of that ignorance. Okay, great. I might change ignorance to perspective. I don't think that was ignorant. I think that's okay. Perspective. I don't really think books are a threat. But I'm an English teacher, so of course I don't. All right, so that's my story. Okay, let's say this took me 30 minutes to craft. Cool, I'm done for the day. I'm done for the day. That's it. That's all I'm doing, okay? Now, I can spend the rest of the day rereading it. Maybe I need to edit it. Okay, I need to, how would I, okay, all right. Make sure I can tweak it, get it right, make sure that I like it, make sure it's long enough. Okay. Now look, y'all, I know this is this is only 4 paragraphs, but that does not mean that it should be short. Okay. Because I'm asking you to write fewer paragraphs, they should be highly quality. Highly quality. They should be high quality paragraphs. All right. I'm all about quality over quantity. So even though it's not many paragraphs, each paragraph should be really good. Okay. If I feel like, you didn't write enough, or it was lackluster, or it was lacking, then I'm going to write that. If you're only writing 1 paragraph a day, that paragraph should be pretty extensive and really well written. Okay. It shouldn't be a paragraph that was written the same quality as if you wrote an entire essay in one day. All right. The whole point of this is that if you write one paragraph a day, each of those paragraphs will be a whole lot better than if you wrote 5 in one day. Okay. So it should be obvious that like you put a lot of time and effort into constructing your paragraph. And so, look, I gave you an example of a paragraph with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 lines. 15 lines is a good, it's a pretty good ratio for a paragraph. Okay. It's a pretty good number. All right. 15 lines per paragraph. People are like, oh, only 5 sentences make a paragraph. That's like for like a 5th grader. Okay. Sentences. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have nine sentences, 15 lines. Okay. All right. Now the next paragraph is going to be a little more difficult because look, this paragraph, you are having to define your term. Oops. Insert a quote. See, you gotta integrate your quote and you gotta cite it. All right. So you're forming a paragraph that has, this is your claim, essentially the definition. This is your support, and then you got to provide analysis. Okay. So this is where we're going to move into the PowerPoint. So I'm going to review some of this stuff and then also talk about some of the, I'm going to kind of teach you a little further about integrating quotes. Okay. So we're going to review the structure of paragraphs. I'm going to go pretty quickly through that because I've already taught it once. I'm just going to re-emphasize. I'm going to provide some further info on integrating quotes. I'm going to continue talking about converting outlines to paragraphs. And then we're going to go over works cited page and using EasyBib for our citation. All right. So I've already discussed how the first part of your analytical paragraphs are claim. Okay. It's one main idea of your paragraph. This is your definition or your example paragraph. All right. This is not the same structure for like an introduction or a conclusion. It's not the same structure for, excuse me, an anecdotal paragraph. Okay. So this is not the structure for your first paragraph of this essay, but this is the structure for your first and second paragraphs. Okay. And it should be pretty short. Then you have your support, your quotes. So that second body paragraph needs to have a quote, not a summary, an actual quote integrated into the paragraph. All right. So you got to have a quote for that second body paragraph. Okay. And it should be a relatively short quote. The whole section should only be about 30%. And then the rest of your paragraph, 50% of the paragraph, is explaining your claim. It can be explaining the quote. It can be explaining how the quote proves your claim. Whatever it is, you're explaining and analyzing. Sometimes people start off too soon. They have a claim and they want to go get too much into analysis when really they should get more into the support and then the analysis. If you remember, I'm not going to read this whole paragraph, but here now with this sample, the sample doesn't have a direct quote. The sample has summary. I'm going to show you in a moment examples of using direct quotes. Okay, so I know my Milan example doesn't have quotes, but your paper will have quotes. All right. So like this is how like a good paragraph is written. Let's see how many lines this is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, a little short, but because I want you to try to aim for 15 lines per paragraph. All right. Now we discussed already MLA formatting. You got to have proper MLA formatting, last name, heading, my name, the class, the due dates. You have your name and page number up here, date, all the spacing correct, center titled. Okay, and then the paragraphs double spaced. All right. I've gone over this, but some things I want to emphasize because all of you are using articles this week. You're using sources from websites, and we got to make sure we understand this. All right. Is that like titles of articles, not websites, titles of articles are in quotation marks. If you're pulling from an article, a New York Times article, the title of the article is in quotation marks. If you're talking about a writer, okay, a short story is in quotation marks. A song title, if you're like, want to write about how songwriting is so good and you love Zach Bryan and you want to talk about his songs are in quotation marks. Bertha is the name of a Grateful Dead song. Love it. Story of an Hour is a title of a short story. The Road Not Taken is a poem. Understanding Chopin is an article. All right. Articles are in song titles and poetry and short stories. These are all in quotation marks. Titles of newspaper magazines. Newspapers or magazines are the publishing websites. The name of a website, not the article, but the website name. The name of albums or films or the title of books. These are all in italics. You will lose points. You will lose points if you do this incorrectly. American Beauty, it's a film and it's a album by the Grateful Dead. It's in italics. Rolling Stone magazine, the New York Times, these are newspaper publishers. They are in italics. Okay. Articles are in quotation marks. The newspaper, the actual newspaper itself, books, film, these are in italics. Okay. So let's say you wanted to use a article from the Atlantic. Okay, the Atlantic. Here we have the Atlantic. We have Our Once Abundant Earth is the title, and then we have John Reed. The publisher is the Atlantic. The publisher is the Atlantic, so therefore it's written in italics. Italics. The article title, Our Once Abundant Earth, is in quotation marks because it is the title of an article published on the Atlantic. And then our author, John Reed. Okay. The Atlantic, italics. Our Once Abundant Earth, quotation marks. Author, John Reed. Every single one of you should be using a source with an author. If it doesn't have an author, you cannot use it. Okay. Now, when you're writing this stuff, okay, punctuation is something that you'll be graded on. When you are writing about the title of a source, okay, commas go inside of quotation marks. This is incorrect right here. This is incorrect. If this was the title of an article, okay, quotation mark here. All right, the comma needs to go inside the quotation mark. So it needs to look like this. See this? This is correct. Quotation mark, the title, comma, quotation mark. Same for periods. If you end the sentence with a quotation mark, the punctuation needs to go inside of it. Heart condition. Okay. Quotation mark, heart condition, period. Quotation mark. This is correct. Okay. Incorrect. Correct. Quotes within a quote. For some reason, if you're quoting somebody, an article that has a quote also, then we use singular quotation marks, which are just apostrophes. Hillary Armstrong discusses how, quote, when a person is apostrophe, seeing red apostrophe, they are actually experiencing nerve damage caused by an increase of blood flow to the brain. Okay. So if you have a quote within a quote, you use the singular apostrophe. Okay. Example, punctuating quotes within quotes. Look at this. This title is called 3/4 of teens, quote, feel happy away from their phones. The publisher, Psychology Today. See, Psychology Today. It's in italics. Title of the article, 3/4 of teens feel happy away from their phones. But because the article goes in quotation marks, then these quotation marks for feel happy are changed to apostrophes. So quotation mark, 3/4 of teens, apostrophe, feel happy, apostrophe, away from their phones, quotation mark. Okay. Now, when you are talking about an article, you got to mention the author. You either need to mention the author in the sentence, like Wordsworth say that romantic poetry was marked by a, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, or you need to mention the author's name in the parentheses afterwards. Romantic poetry is characterized by the, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, quote. And then you can put Wordsworth's name, their last name, in parentheses at the end, period. I think it's best to include the author's name in the sentence, in the lead-in sentence, but you don't have to. Sometimes it just doesn't work. So instead, you put it at the end in parentheses. Quotation mark, parentheses, period. Okay. Every sentence that contains a quote must include the author's name, either in the sentence or in the citations, but not both. Okay. My dad had a philosophy about medication. If one worked, two worked better. That was not a good philosophy. All right. That's not good for medication. And that's definitely not also good for writing the author's name. Okay. Sorry, Pop. Redundant citations will be marked as errors. Okay. So here, a successful adaptation in film is, quote, keeping to the heart of the original story, emphasizing the best features of the literary work and not changing anything fundamental to the original story. Quote, Baldwin. If there's a page number, you put a page number. It's like if you're citing from a book. Let's just say you are quoting from a book. Okay, but if you're quoting from a website, you don't have to worry about page numbers. Author's name is not mentioned in the sentence. Therefore, it is placed in the parenthetical citation. There's no Baldwin name mentioned in this article in this sentence. Therefore, the name goes in the parentheses afterwards. And the parentheses is between the quotation mark and the period. Every sentence, like, okay, I've already said that. Okay. So here we have, according to film critic Annie Baldwin, a successful adaptation in film is keeping to the heart of the original story, emphasizing the best features of the literary work and not changing anything fundamental to the original story. If there was no page number, then there would just be a period here after story before the quotation mark. Annie Baldwin has already been mentioned in the sentence. Now, it's best for you to, if you're introducing someone who's not famous, you should kind of provide a hint of who they are. In this case, Annie Baldwin is a film critic. So we have, according to film critic, comma, Annie Baldwin, comma, a successful adaptation in film is. If it just says Annie Baldwin thinks a successful adaptation in film is, and provides a quote, if you don't mention like what her job is or who she is or her relevance, then your audience might not care. Like who is that? Your neighbor? Like, I don't know Annie Hall. I mean, Annie Baldwin. But once you emphasize that it's a film critic, your reader is like, oh, okay, well, that's someone to listen to. They're a film critic. But here, though, this is incorrect. According to film critic Annie Baldwin, blah, 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 the quote, 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 quote. And then we have Baldwin in parentheses. And then we have 2 periods. There's a lot of errors here. So we have 1 period and 1 Baldwin. This is better. So keep this, get rid of this. This would lose points. I don't know if this really applies to us today. So literary present. When discussing a story, a film, article, and any other piece of literature, always write in present tense, unless when talking about something that happened in the past. I kind of just want to move on from that one. Okay, so here we go. Putting it all together. Here we go, y'all. Here's how you should introduce your quotes. Aja Romano, writing for Vox magazine, discusses how King's writing has always displayed significant literary qualities, particularly ongoing literary themes that have shaped how we understand horror as well as ourselves. Okay, we have the author and we have the publisher. Or Aja Romano, writing for Vox magazine, writes, King's writing has always displayed significant literary qualities, blah, blah, blah. All right, I want to show you this. Listen, y'all. Punctuation before quote. Okay. If your quote comes before a verb, writes, if the last word before the quote is a verb, you need to have a comma and you need to have a capital letter. Now, King is already capitalized because his name is proper noun. But like if the first word was writing, you would still have a capital letter. Okay. If you have a quote that comes right before a verb, you need to have a comma, quote, and then a capital letter. All right. If the word that comes right before the quote is not a verb, then you don't have a comma. And if the word is not a proper noun, it's not capitalized. So like here, discusses how. Discusses is a verb, but then we have how. How here is not a comma. Therefore, there is no comma. Okay, the how serves. How is a verb. So I had some more examples back here. Okay, right here. Janine thinks about her daughter's behavior has been impacted by the way she herself was raised by a mother who thought, quote, words of affirmation, quote, were meant to affirm how inadequate she was at simple activities. This quote does not come before a, I mean, I guess like, oh no, thought is a verb, but it's not coming from a verb that's coming from the speaker in this case. This is a natural part of the sentence. This is not introducing the quote by saying who the speaker is and if the speaker said it. So there is no commas and there's no capital letters. Here we have, according to film critic Annie Baldwin, a successful adaptation in film is, so it's not being introduced by saying Annie Baldwin writes, Annie Baldwin says. So in this case, there's no comma, and the capital K is lowercase. Yeah, okay. All right, so I've talked about integrating quotes already. This is actually from previous PowerPoints. I'm not gonna go into this too much. Okay. quote's got to be integrated. This right here is incorrect because we have a quote here. Feminist criticism focuses on the ways in which literature reinforces or undermines the economic, political, social, and psychological oppression of women. Feminist theory was created in response to patriarchy. Nia Griffin, period. All right. And then we have the paradigm of gender equality of women's experiences provides a critical viewpoint on social, cultural, and political concerns from a feminist lens. This is from an actual student's paper. This is incorrect on many reasons. A, this quote is not integrated. It begins with a quotation mark, ends with a quotation mark, and there's a period. It's also wrong because this parenthetical citation is incorrect. You don't include the first names, you only include last names. All right. If a quote can be deleted and there's no evidence of it, then it's probably a dropped quote. So for example, here is the same paragraph up there. We have the quote, and then we have this sentence. And then here it is deleted. Okay. We have this sentence: the paradigm of gender equality and women's experiences provides a critical viewpoint on social, cultural, and political concerns from a feminist lens. This is not an incomplete sentence. This is a complete sentence. There's no evidence that there ever was a quote that came before it. So that means that this quote was not integrated correctly. And I've discussed how you can use a signal phrase and a verb to integrate a quote. In the article, comma, quotation mark, the irony is lost in translation, comma, quotation mark, film critic, comma, George Flicker, comma, writing for, in italics, the Hollywood Inquirer, because that's the website, the organization, argues, this is a verb, George Flicker is arguing, so then we have a comma, quotation mark, and capital V. The problem with Romeo and Juliet is that it ignores the fact that Shakespeare's play satirizes and makes a fool of the hyperbolic stage of adolescence. Now, we could also integrate phrases and parts of the quote into your own sentence. So here, instead of having this long quote, you could write, what makes Romeo and Juliet so cringy is how it, quote, ignores, which is quoting here, ignores the satire of the original production that was aimed at highlighting the, quote, hyperbolic stage of adolescence, which is right here, hyperbolic stage of adolescence, and instead tries to convince the audience that we should actually feel pity towards these kids who commit suicide. And then we still have, in quotation mark, Flicker, because that's who wrote it, period. Both of those are correct. You can talk about who this person is speaking, who they wrote for, the name of their article, and what they said. Or you can take their ideas, infuse it into a sentence that you write, provide some quotation marks, and then add their name at the end for as your reference. Both of these are correct ways to integrate the same quote on the same discussion. I've gone over this, verbs that can be used, okay. When introducing a quote, okay, when introducing a quote after a verb, there needs to be a comma after the verb, and then a capital letter of the first word in the quote. This is a verb that's being used, a speaking verb by the author. So again, in the article, the irony is lost in translation. Film critic George Flicker, writing for the Hollywood Inquirer, argues. George Flicker argues, and then we have comma, capital letter. When you don't have a speaking verb, or there's a word in between the speaking verb and the quote, such as here, discusses how, okay, then you don't have a comma and you don't have a uppercase letter. You have a lowercase letter. The problem. All right, then we talk about modifying words or parts. You might have a long quote. The quote's too long to use, so you want to modify it. Okay. So let's see. You can use an ellipses to take out words from a quote. So here we have a shortening of Flicker's quote. We have the problem with Romeo and Juliet is that it ignores apostrophes the hyperbolic stage of adolescence. Okay. So if you look back, see, ignores it. We took out the fact that Shakespeare's play satirizes and makes a fool of the, took out all of this and shortened it to, it ignores the hyperbolic stage of adolescence. We removed like 10 words from it, all in order. We took out that whole chunk. Brackets, use brackets when you need to change a word from a quote in order to make it fit grammatically in the sequence of the sentence or to clarify a pronoun. So here we have how the film attempts to ignore, instead of ignores, ignore the hyperbolic stage of adolescence. Eliminates the themes that is at the center of the play. This sentence would not sound correct if you had ignores with an S. So it changes it to ignore. Okay. So you need to use brackets if the quote is in a different tense than the way you're writing it. Okay. If when you add the quote, there's some grammatical incongruency, you got to change some of the words. Just use brackets to indicate that. So if you have a long quote, don't use the entire quote. If it's longer than 2 lines, do not use the entire quote. Break it down to nothing longer than a line. Quote phrases rather than complete sentences. Okay. So let's say I have this whole, I like this whole quote. This is a quote by Simone de Beauvoir. I cannot use this whole quote in my analysis of a short story. Okay. So instead of taking this whole 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 line quote, I break it down. And I'm like, okay, I want to use masochist. I want to use she enters into a state of humiliation. I want to use object of someone else. And I want to use allows herself to be objectified. That's all I'm going to pull from this quote. Okay. So then I write my analysis like this. This is my original analysis, or some kid's original analysis, integrating quotes, okay, from Simone de Beauvoir. So we have an analysis. Chopin's Miss Mallard represents the, quote, masochistic woman who automatically goes into a self-repressive state to fulfill her role as the woman-turned-object wife, de Beauvoir. The French feminist philosopher Simone de Beauvoir believes that women have forever been giving up their identities, much in a self-loathing way, in order to conform to the societal requirements of marriage. In The Story of an Hour, the heroine, Miss Mallard, is a lady who is, quote, young with a fair, calm face, but her youthfulness cannot save her from the effects of, quote, repression that brought, quote, lines to her face. The repression that she experiences is from having to, quote, enter into a state of humiliation. This is a bracket because here it is enters. There's an S. We're not using enters. We're using enter. So there's no S. So bracket. Here, this word humiliation is already in quotation marks in Simone's quote. So since it's a quote within a quote, we use singular apostrophes, humiliation, at becoming an object of someone else, which in this case is Brentley, a man that seems nice enough and who, quote, she had loved sometimes, but often she had not, end quotes, period. By, again, changing the word to allowing, instead of allowing herself to be objectified in order to receive some sense of meaning, Miss Mallard has to repress her inner soul and sense of herself. Okay, so again, if this was the original word allow, by allow herself to be objectified, that's grammatically incorrect. It has to be allowing. So the bracket is used to change the word allow to allowing. Okay. So we have, you can shorten it, you can cut things down, you can change things. You just got to use the correct punctuation. Okay, like right here. She had loved, sometimes, but often she had not. This shows that there was, this right here shows that there was some of this cut out, some of the longer quote was cut out. And then this bracket for but is included because this paragraph is all about a contrast. But in this one little sentence, you kind of miss that. So the but is added in order to make it better understood by the reader. Whew, that was a lot. All right. So this week, you're converting your outline to a draft. You're writing a works cited page, which I have like 2 minutes to show you. Okay. Then you're posting it all on the discussion board. All right. So all of that I just went over is meant to help you with this paragraph right here. Taking your term, taking your definition of the term, and then integrating your quote, okay, and citing it correctly. If you read my example, I have it posted for you. You can read my example and right here, how I integrate this quote. Aja Romano, writing for Vox magazine, discusses how King's writing has always displayed significant blah, 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 blah. Okay. This is my example. I have this posted for you to look at so you can look at it. And I would just write the actual paragraph in this document. Okay. All right. So you want to write each of your body paragraphs this week. Now, when you're done, when you have written your paper and you need to do a works cited page, which you just go to the end of it, center, type works cited, and you only have one that you did. You have this, you have your online source. Okay. So this is the web address to my source. This is my article that I used. Okay. So the way you get your proper citation is go to, where is it? Oh, go here, week 4, click on EasyBib, click on create citations, click on website, paste your article. So this is it right here, article. Oh, it's there now. Paste it, hit search. Okay. There we go. It popped up right here. Click on cite. Continue. And then you got to review all the information, make sure it's all correct. So look, article title, Stephen King has spent half a century scaring us, but his legacy is so much more than horror. I don't know, go here. Yeah, I guess that's the title. Okay, it's a long title, but whatever. That's the title. Okay. Author, Aja Romano. Aja Romano. Yep, that's it. Okay. Sorry, my this little thing is out of the way. Here, let's put this here. Okay. Vox publisher. Yep. Was published in 2017. Yep. Oh no, updated October 10th, 2018. So we're gonna fix that. October 18. Okay. October 10th, actually. Sometimes you get to fix some information, which is fine. All right, complete citation. View sponsored message. Okay. You watch a little 30-second video. It's free. All right. So, what do you expect? All right. And then what's going to do is that it's producing the proper MLA citation. And so when it pops up in a moment, we'll just click it, copy it, and then we're going to take it over to our draft and post it. Super easy. Okay. Here we go. All right here. Yep, looks good. Copy citation. Let's go to our essay drafts. Okay. You're typing up your paragraph. Okay. Go to the very bottom. Works cited. Now, the works cited, though, needs to be to the left. So we'll click on left, paste it. All right. Now, this formatting is incorrect. Oops. So it needs to make sure that it is, that this is over here. Okay. That it is 0, 0, double. Okay. And then you got to have what's called a hanging indent. The first line is all the way to the left, but then the next two lines are indented. Now, if you go to the second line and hit indent, the whole thing goes over. Don't want to do that. So instead, you put the cursor at the end of the last line and hit tab, and then it pushes it over. So then you put the cursor at the end of this line, hit tab, and pushes it over. Boom, that's it. Okay. So now you have a correctly written citation. You have your one source. It has the hanging indent, and it has the article title and the publisher, okay, and the URL. This is exactly how your works cited should look. It's only one. Paper 2, you'll have 2. Paper 3, you'll have 3, okay, or maybe more. I don't know. So this is the essential part. If you don't have this, you'll lose points. And it's very easy to do. You just, again, go to, oh, those are my, okay, cool. Go back to citations. Just go to our dashboard. If I can find it. Fine. Oh, content. Here it is. Here's week 4. Just click on Easy Bib, and it'll take you there. Okay. And you go through the steps. Then you copy and paste it. So what you're turning in today at the end of this week should look like this. Should look like an essay. Should have heading. It should be formatted correctly. You should have lengthy paragraphs. Okay. And you should have a works cited page. This is what I'm looking for. I'm not reading it, so it could be all wrong inside, but the main thing for your drafts, when I grade your drafts, I am grading that you have it, that it looks like this. Okay. I'm not grading you on whether what you've written is correct. I'm grading that it looks like a draft. And when you write drafts, you should write the best draft possible every time. The best draft that you possibly can write. It's not a crappy draft. Okay. You should be fleshing it out as well as you can. All right. So then go here to the discussion board, create thread, SA1 draft, post your draft. Okay. Let's see, what did I call this? SA1 example. All right. Like post it. It can't be a web address. It has to be an actual file. Put it here because we're going to be editing each other's papers. All right. Yeah, go there. And then you need to go back to here. And you need to post it here. All right. Submit it. All right. Upload files. So that way I can grade it. All right. Boom. Okay. So make sure you do that, y'all. That's the goal for this week. Time's up. Bell's rung. Third period starting. Hope this was helpful. All right, y'all. Let me know if you need anything. Okay. Bye-bye.